My name is Sophie Reynolds. I'm 32 years old and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Sugar and Bloom, my bakery, sits right in the heart of our charming downtown, a place where dreams rise like freshly baked bread. At least that was the dream I chased. But my story? It's not about baking. It's about betrayal, cold cruelty, and a man who thought he could replace me. Spoiler alert, he couldn't. The text arrived as I was delicately piping buttercream, roses onto a 3-tiered wedding cake. My assistant, Lily, hummed softly while packaging cupcakes for delivery. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon at Sugar and Bloom. Instead, everything shattered with 12 cruel words. I'm done pretending. You and your silly baking hobby are pathetic. I stared at the glowing screen, my hands remarkably steady. I'm moving in with Julia. She's 25 and exciting. There it was. Not only was Derek leaving me, he was doing so for someone barely old enough to rent a car. He wasn't finished. I'll be by next week to get my stuff. A chill ran down my spine, but I didn't flinch. I calmly placed the final rose on the cake and smiled at the customer who had no idea my marriage was ending through a cold text message. That was Derek, though. Always dramatic. Always cruel. For years, he mocked my love for baking. When I quit my marketing job to start Sugar and Bloom, he laughed. Who's going to buy fancy cupcakes, Sophie? He said. It's cute you think this will be more than a phase. At first, I believed him. Sales were slow, bills were high. But I pushed through. I worked 14-hour days, attended farmers markets, and learned everything about online marketing. Slowly, customers came. Slowly, orders piled up. Slowly, my hobby became my livelihood. But Derek never saw it that way. He saw flour-dusted aprons and late nights as inconveniences. He sneered when I spent weekends perfecting recipes. You work too much, he complained. You're missing life. By life, he meant date nights where he'd scroll his phone, gym memberships he never used, and beers with friends who thought business owners were fools. Still, I stayed. Because I loved him. Or maybe because I didn't want to believe he'd turn into this. The signs were clear months ago. He started working late without logical explanations. He changed his phone password. He suddenly cared about trendy clothes and whitening his teeth. I knew something was wrong. That's why I quietly prepared. I opened a private business account, in my name only. I registered Sugar and Bloom as a limited liability company. I moved all profits there and left the joint account untouched except for my share of monthly bills. Derek never noticed. He was too busy pretending he was still 25. When I saw hotel charges on our credit card last month, I didn't confront him. I called my lawyer. She helped draft divorce papers and advised me to gather evidence. Every suspicious transaction was documented. Every belittling text was saved. Derek thought he controlled the narrative. That afternoon, after receiving his cruel text, I didn't cry. I simply typed back, "Good luck, Derek. He didn't deserve more." That night, I locked up Sugar and Bloom and poured myself a glass of red wine. I reviewed my records, my bank statements, and smiled. Derek believed he emptied the joint account and left me desperate. In truth, he left me free. Free from years of subtle insults. Free from a man who valued appearances more than partnership. Free to build the life he couldn't imagine. As I sipped my wine, another text came. Don't bother begging, Julia, and I leave for Mexico tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Mexico. On our joint credit card. I calmly dialed the number on the back of the card. Hello? I need to report fraudulent charges. By morning, Derek's dream vacation was canceled. His tickets void. His hotel reservation gone. He texted furiously, calling me petty and bitter. I ignored him. He emptied the joint account? That was fine. My real assets were locked safely in my business account. The house? Mine. I inherited it from my grandmother and never added Derek to the deed. Sugar and Bloom? Legally and financially mine alone. Derek's smirks and mockery had built walls around my heart over the years, but now those same walls protected my future. By the end of the week, he sent another text. You'll regret this. Enjoy your little shop while you can. I laughed. Little shop? Sugar and Bloom had 6 months of orders, thousands of online followers, and brand partnerships pending. Derek had left for greener pastures, but he didn't realize he was the one stepping into the desert. I fell asleep that night more peaceful than I had in years. Derek thought he ended my story with a text. He didn't realize he'd written the perfect opening chapter of my comeback. Derek didn't take long to spiral. Within days of our split becoming public, he unleashed a barrage of condescending texts, thinly veiled threats, and smug assumptions. "You'll be crawling back when those cupcake orders dry up," he gloated. "Julia and I are starting fresh. Real happiness. Something you'll never understand." I let him talk, or rather type. Every word became evidence. My lawyer loved them. "Keep him talking," she advised. "Men like him bury themselves." Meanwhile, Sugar and Bloom was thriving. I spent my days decorating wedding cakes and running baking classes, while Derek's Mexico plans fell apart spectacularly. The charges had been flagged as fraud and reversed. The flights voided, the hotel canceled. Derek and Julia ended up stuck at a cheap motel near the airport, posting filtered selfies, pretending they were on a glamorous escape. Julia's captions were particularly amusing. "When life throws lemons, make lemonade." Except their lemonade was powdered and served with stale ice. By the time Derek returned to town, he was furious. He demanded his share of the house. I reminded him calmly that my grandmother had left it solely to me and his name wasn't on the deed. He insisted he was entitled to half of Sugar and Bloom. I forwarded his threats to my attorney. "Classic mistake," she noted. "He thinks marriage means automatic ownership. It doesn't." When his lawyer reached out, they were shockingly confident. Derek supported her emotionally. His lawyer argued in early emails. He encouraged her dream. I laughed. Encouragement? Derek had spent years calling Sugar and Bloom my expensive hobby. He skipped tasting events, refused to help on weekends, and openly rolled his eyes when I stayed up until midnight, fulfilling holiday orders. Support? Please. The first court hearing came faster than I expected. Derek showed up cocky, wearing designer sunglasses indoors and dragging Julia behind him. She wore oversized sunglasses and looked deeply uncomfortable. My lawyer and I exchanged a glance. "They think this is a formality," she whispered. Derek's arrogance evaporated quickly. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, and she wasted no time tearing into him. "You admit to emptying the joint account?" she asked. Derek shrugged. "I was leaving. I figured she didn't need it. And using joint credit cards for a personal vacation?" Derek tried to joke. "Guess that didn't work out." The judge didn't smile. "Financial misconduct," she noted coldly. "All shared assets are frozen effective immediately." Derek's jaw actually dropped. Julia whispered something and quickly excused herself from the courtroom. The judge continued, methodically reviewing our documentation. The deed in my name. Sugar and Bloom's LLC papers filed well before Derek's betrayal. My careful bookkeeping showing all business income was separate. "Your Honor," Derek's lawyer protested weakly. "The business grew during the marriage. He is entitled to a portion." My lawyer stood, confidence radiating. "Your Honor, my client built her business without his support. In fact, we have texts where Mr. Reynolds repeatedly belittled her efforts and mocked Sugar and Bloom as insignificant. He cannot claim moral support retroactively." The judge nodded, unimpressed with Derek's weak defense. "So noted. Mr. Reynolds," she addressed him directly, "your conduct demonstrates not only a lack of contribution, but active discouragement. This court does not reward spite." Derek's face reddened. The final blow came when the judge ordered him to return all funds he had taken from the joint account within 24 hours. Derek stammered. "I spent it already. I can't." "Then find a way," she responded crisply. The hearing adjourned, and Derek stormed past me in the hallway. "You planned this," he accused, his voice a low hiss. "You trapped me." I smiled, calm and unbothered. "No, Derek, I protected myself. There's a difference." As I walked past him, heels clicking against the marble floor, Julia emerged from the restroom, phone pressed to her ear. She barely glanced at him. Their glamorous escape was unraveling faster than he could spin excuses. Back at Sugar and Bloom, Lily greeted me with a warm smile. "Busy day," she said, gesturing at the packed order board. I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in years. Derek thought he could humiliate me, thought he could take everything. Instead, he'd handed me something priceless: freedom and clarity. That night, I poured myself another glass of wine, this time out of celebration. Derek wasn't winning. He wasn't even playing the same game anymore. I was building an empire. He was figuring out how to pay for instant noodles. Sometimes revenge isn't loud or violent. Sometimes it's a woman calmly watching her ex destroy himself while she gets stronger, richer, and happier. The days following the court hearing were eerily quiet at first. Derek had been ordered to return the money he stole from our joint account, but everyone knew he couldn't. His texts turned from arrogant to desperate almost overnight. "You don't have to do this," he messaged one evening. "We can figure something out, Sophie. We were partners once." Partners? That word made me laugh. Partners don't belittle your dreams. Partners don't empty your bank account and run off with a woman young enough to be your intern. No, Derek wasn't a partner. He was an anchor I had finally cut loose. Meanwhile, Sugar and Bloom was exploding. The viral momentum from our rainbow wedding cake video didn't slow down. Orders doubled. Local influencers stopped by for collaborations. I hired 2 new staff members to keep up with demand. For the first time in years, I felt unstoppable. Derek, on the other hand, wasn't handling the fallout gracefully. Julia, the 25-year-old upgrade, started posting cryptic Instagram stories about toxic energy and disappointments. My assistant Lily caught one and showed me with a smirk. "Looks like paradise is overrated," she joked. By the 3rd week, rumors started spreading. Derek had tried using his personal credit cards to maintain their luxurious lifestyle, but they were maxed out. Julia, unimpressed with budget motels and frozen dinners, left him. Apparently, she didn't find it cute anymore that he was unemployed and sleeping on a worn-out sofa in his friend's basement. I knew all of this because Amanda, Derek's sister, had suddenly become very friendly. She stopped by Sugar and Bloom, under the guise of buying macarons, but quickly dropped the act. "He's a mess," she said bluntly, lowering her voice as she leaned across the counter. "I don't even recognize him anymore. Julia dumped him. He's broke. He says you ruined his life." I couldn't help but smile softly. "I didn't ruin his life, Amanda. He did that all by himself. I just stopped letting him ruin mine." She looked at me, shame written all over her face. "I'm sorry for what I said before. We thought you were cold and distant. But now, after seeing how he treated you..." Her voice trailed off. I didn't need her apology, but I appreciated it. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth finally shining through. Still, Derek wasn't done embarrassing himself. He filed a motion to revisit our divorce settlement, claiming he had been tricked. He insisted that he was emotionally distressed during the proceedings and had not fully understood what he was giving up. His lawyer, who I suspected was hired on a payment plan, filed a pile of weak arguments. My lawyer called me laughing when she received them. "He actually wrote that your business wouldn't exist without him," she said, barely containing her amusement. "He claims he inspired Sugar and Bloom because he used to suggest cake flavors sometimes." I rolled my eyes. Derek's flavor suggestions were always ridiculous. Bacon-wrapped chocolate lava cake. Anyone? The judge was not amused by his antics. At the emergency hearing, she looked directly at Derek and sighed audibly. "Mr. Reynolds, this court does not revisit settlements because you regret your decisions or because your personal circumstances have worsened. You made your choices. You are not entitled to more because your girlfriend left you and your finances are poor." Watching Derek squirm under the judge's cold stare was deeply satisfying. He looked small, pathetic even, dressed in outdated, business-casual clothes that hung awkwardly on his thinner frame. Julia was nowhere to be found this time. When the judge ruled against his petition and ordered him to pay my legal fees for wasting the court's time, I felt a wave of finality wash over me. Derek had officially lost. His money, his girlfriend, his family's respect, even the dignity he clung to so desperately. After the hearing, Derek followed me out to the parking lot. He called my name, and I turned slowly, arms crossed. "You really think you're better than me now?" he sneered, his voice filled with bitterness and desperation. I smiled kindly. the way you would to a child throwing a tantrum. No, Derek, I don't think I'm better than you. I know I am. Because I grew. You just sank. His face twisted with anger, but he didn't have a comeback. He turned and walked away, shoulders hunched like a man carrying the weight of all his bad choices. That night, back at Sugar and Bloom, I celebrated quietly. The staff surprised me with champagne after closing. They toasted to the busiest month we had ever had. I looked around at my thriving business, the employees who felt like family, and the vision I had built from scratch. Derek had tried to tear me down, but all he did was give me the freedom to rise higher than ever. As I locked up the bakery, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Derek. You ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I didn't even open it. I blocked his number right then and there. His story with me was over. But mine? Mine was just beginning. And this chapter was going to be sweeter than anything I had ever baked before. 3 months had passed since Derek's pathetic attempt to overturn the settlement. Life had never been sweeter, literally and figuratively. Sugar and Bloom's expansion was no longer a dream. It was reality. We had just opened our second location, in Mount Pleasant, and pre-orders were booked out for weeks. Every day as I walked into my bright, airy stores filled with laughter, the scent of vanilla and buttercream, and the hum of happy customers, I felt invincible. Derek, on the other hand, had become somewhat of a local legend, but not in the way he hoped. Word travels fast in Charleston. My regular customers gleefully shared updates they overheard from mutual friends or Derek's own family, who no longer shielded him from judgment. Apparently, after losing the case, Derek had been forced to move back in with his parents. A grown man, 38 years old, back in his childhood bedroom surrounded by old sports trophies and faded posters of bands that didn't even exist anymore. Julia? Long gone. She had dumped him 2 months ago after he suggested she help him with rent and bills. According to Amanda, who had practically switched sides and visited Sugar and Bloom weekly now, Julia even left behind a few choice words. You're not ambitious, Derek. You're entitled. That's the difference. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered the way he laughed when he sent that cruel text the day he left me. How he emptied our account and mocked my little shop. No, Derek didn't deserve sympathy. He deserved exactly what he had. Nothing. Meanwhile, Sugar and Bloom's online store exploded. The viral videos hadn't slowed down. Our custom cakes became a hit in nearby cities, and I even started shipping exclusive cake decorating kits nationwide. When a well-known lifestyle influencer featured us in her Women Who Inspire series, sales quadrupled overnight. My team grew from 3 employees to 15. I hired an accountant, a marketing consultant, and even my own PR manager. I wasn't just running a bakery anymore. I was building a brand. One evening, while reviewing our quarterly earnings, an amount that would have made Derek's eyes pop out, I received a message from Amanda. It was a picture. Derek, sitting alone at a local dive bar, slouched over a beer, looking disheveled and bitter. Thought you might like to see what winning looks like, Amanda captioned it. I didn't reply, but I saved the photo anyway. Not to gloat, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. His downfall wasn't loud, it wasn't scandalous. It was quiet, slow, and deeply humiliating. Even his own family had grown tired of his excuses. Amanda confided in me during another visit. He blames everyone but himself. You, Julia, the court, even mom and dad. He says no one supported him. I raised an eyebrow. Supported him in what? Leaving his wife for a younger woman and draining our account? Amanda shook her head. Exactly. He doesn't get it. He really thought he could fail upward. Fail upward. That described Derek perfectly. He had coasted through life on charm and arrogance, never once believing that actions have consequences. Until now. Back at Sugar and Bloom, success tasted sweeter than any cupcake I had ever made. I stood in my flagship store one Saturday morning, watching families pick out desserts, couples sharing slices of cake, and young girls asking for baking advice. This wasn't just a business anymore. It was my legacy. I had turned pain into power. The best part? I never had to lift a finger to destroy Derek. He did that all by himself. Karma worked quietly, like a baker patiently waiting for dough to rise. One evening, while closing up, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sophie. It's Derek. His voice was hoarse, defeated. I can't believe you did this to me. I leaned against the counter, stunned but calm. Did what, Derek? Live my life after you walked out? He hesitated, then launched into a sad, pathetic monologue about how Julia had used him, how his parents treated him like a child, how the world was unfair. You could help me, he said desperately. Give me a job, I know the business. I could manage, or... I laughed. Actually laughed. The audacity. Derek, I interrupted firmly, the only thing you ever managed was to underestimate me. I built this without you, and I'll continue to build without you. You made your choices. Live with them. Before he could respond, I hung up and blocked the number. Again. That night, I poured a glass of champagne, not wine this time, and toasted to myself. Derek's world was crumbling, brick by brick. Mine was expanding, glowing brighter. Every day. He thought I was just a baker. He thought Sugar and Bloom was just a hobby. But I wasn't baking to pass time. I was baking my empire, one cake at a time. 6 months after Derek's pathetic attempt to crawl back into my life, Sugar and Bloom became unstoppable. The brand was no longer just local, it was national. My online store had turned into a sensation. Subscription boxes featuring our seasonal. Cupcakes were backordered for months. Corporate clients from all over the country placed large orders for holiday gifts. I was invited to speak at small business conferences. Women entrepreneurs flooded my inbox asking for advice. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being the girl with the cute bakery and became Sophie Reynolds, CEO. The shift was subtle at first, but undeniable. While my business flourished, Derek's story became something of a tragic local tale. People whispered about him in coffee shops and hair salons. Amanda, now a loyal customer and something of a friend, kept me updated on his steady decline. He had bounced from job to job, never lasting more than a few weeks. His reputation followed him everywhere. No one wants to work with a guy who ditched his wife, drained their savings, and got dumped by a receptionist half his age, Amanda said bluntly over coffee one afternoon. He had tried dating again too, but with little success. According to mutual acquaintances, his dating profile was a sad attempt at reclaiming relevance. Young at heart, passionate about life and love, it read. Yet, every photo looked increasingly desperate. Rumor had it, younger women swiped left instantly once they heard about his history. Older women? They saw right through his charming facade. Meanwhile, Sugar and Bloom expanded to a third location in Atlanta. I remembered how Derek used to mock me every time I suggested expansion. Why risk it? He would say. Just be happy you have something. He never understood that I didn't build Sugar and Bloom to just have something. I built it to have everything. On the night of my Atlanta grand opening, surrounded by journalists, influencers, and loyal customers, I gave a short speech. Cameras flashed, people applauded, and I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Derek crossed my mind for a fleeting second, and I smiled, not out of bitterness, out of gratitude. Without his betrayal, I may never have pushed myself this far. That gratitude quickly turned into amusement when Amanda texted me later that night. You won't believe this, she wrote. Attached was a screenshot from a local Facebook group. Derek, of all people, had started offering business consulting services. I know what it takes to build success, his ad read. Let me help you grow your dream. I nearly dropped my phone laughing. This man who spent years mocking Sugar and Bloom as a silly hobby now positioned himself as a business guru. The audacity was laughable. But what came next was even better. A former employee of Derek's commented publicly, tearing his ad to shreds. He spent more time hitting on receptionists than managing anything, the comment read. It went viral locally. Derek removed the ad within hours. He couldn't escape his own history. He became a walking cautionary tale, and he hated it. 2 weeks later, Amanda visited again, her tone softer this time. He's not doing well, she admitted. Our parents are fed up. He barely leaves his room. Keeps saying the world turned on him. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply nodded. No, Amanda, I corrected gently. The world didn't turn on him. The world just stopped protecting him from himself. Amanda looked at me, eyes full of quiet respect. You're amazing, she said. You didn't just survive this, you thrived. That night, sitting in my beautiful living room, the one Derek once dismissed as too small and simple, I reflected on everything. He thought I'd beg him to stay. He thought I'd crumble when he left. He thought his absence would break me. He couldn't have been more wrong. Sugar and Bloom was bigger than ever. I was wealthier, happier, and stronger than I ever imagined. Derek had faded into irrelevance, not because I destroyed him, but because he did nothing to save himself. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't crushing someone. It's living so well they become nothing more than a distant, embarrassing memory. A year had passed since Derek walked out of my life and tried to burn everything down behind him. What he didn't expect was that I wouldn't just walk through the ashes, I'd build a palace on them. Sugar and Bloom now had 4 thriving locations across the Southeast. Our online sales had turned into a national phenomenon. We were featured in 2 business magazines as one of the fastest-growing female-led companies of the year. I had hired more staff, expanded our product lines, and even launched a small scholarship program for young women entrepreneurs. My days were filled with meetings, creativity, and purpose. Derek, however, had become invisible, at least to everyone, except his increasingly frustrated family. Amanda had kept me in the loop, though she always tread lightly when mentioning him now. He's still living with Mom and Dad, she revealed during a casual visit to Sugar and Bloom. Keeps saying he's waiting for the right opportunity. I raised an eyebrow. Is he still offering business consulting? She laughed, shaking her head. No one hired him? Last I heard, he's working nights at a warehouse. Says it's temporary while he figures things out. There was no malice in my reaction anymore. Honestly, I hardly cared. He had become so irrelevant that even thinking about him felt like giving him too much attention. But then came the letter. It arrived at Sugar and Bloom's main location, addressed to me and Derek's. Handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, part of me curious, part of me already bored. Inside was a desperate plea masked as a business proposal. Derek wanted to reconnect. He wanted to put the past behind us, and suggested we join forces to expand. Sugar and Bloom even further. His pitch? He could bring valuable management experience and fresh ideas. I nearly choked on my coffee. This man, who once mocked my little shop, who ran off with a younger woman, drained our account, humiliated me publicly, and fought me in court, now wanted to partner up. I couldn't even be angry. It was pitiful. My lawyer advised me to ignore the letter, but I felt Derek deserved something better, something final. So I wrote him back. It wasn't a cruel letter, just clear and sharp, like the knives we used in our bakery to craft perfection. I told him Sugar and Bloom was built from my vision, my hard work, and my resilience, none of which he contributed to. I reminded him that the company was thriving because I had never allowed negativity, doubt, or lazy arrogance to taint it. I wished him well, and ended with a line he would never forget. You are not part of this story anymore, Derek. Not as a partner, not even as a footnote. I sealed the letter and sent it via registered mail. 3 days later, Amanda texted me. You crushed him, she wrote simply. He's been sulking all day, said he thought you'd finally see sense. He doesn't get it, Sophie. He never will. Meanwhile, Sugar and Bloom celebrated a new milestone. Our 5th location had just opened in Nashville, and we threw a huge event. Media outlets, influencers, loyal customers, and friends all gathered to celebrate. Champagne flowed. Cameras flashed. I stood on stage and shared my journey, from quitting my safe marketing job to turning my passion into a multi-million-dollar brand. I didn't mention Derek. I didn't need to. But when a journalist asked during the Q&A, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned from your success?" I smiled knowingly. Don't let people who underestimate you define you. Let them go. Let them watch from the sidelines while you build something extraordinary. The crowd erupted in applause. That night, while toasting with my team, Amanda pulled me aside. She looked serious, almost hesitant. He's moving out, she said softly. Our parents told him it's time. He's got a tiny studio apartment lined up. He's pretty broken, Sophie. I met her gaze steadily. He was broken long before he left me, Amanda. He just didn't know it yet. As Derek prepared to move into his new reality, a cramped, lonely apartment above a laundromat, I expanded into new dreams. Sugar and Bloom was in talks to enter major retail chains. Licensing deals and television appearances were on the horizon. He had become everything he feared most: forgotten. That night, I framed the last letter I had sent him. I hung it next to the original text he sent the day he left me. The cruel words, "I'm done pretending. You and your silly baking hobby are pathetic," now sat beside my calm rejection. Two sides of a story only I got to finish. Derek thought leaving me would ruin my life. He thought he'd be the one thriving while I quietly fell apart. But as it turns out, his greatest humiliation wasn't that I moved on. It was that I never once looked back. 2 years after Derek's infamous text shattered our marriage, my world looked nothing like he had predicted. Sugar and Bloom had become a household name across the South and was spreading fast. We now operated 5 boutiques, all thriving. Our products were sold in upscale grocery chains. Our decorating kits and subscription boxes had become viral staples on social media. National magazines featured us as a beacon of female entrepreneurship. Life didn't just move on without Derek. It flourished. Meanwhile, Derek became a ghost. Amanda, who by now was more like a friend than an ex-sister-in-law, occasionally updated me on his life, though I never asked. "He's still bitter," she said during one of her visits. "Still blames everyone but himself. He lost the warehouse job after too many no-shows. Can't afford his studio anymore. Last I heard, he's crashing on a college buddy's sofa." I didn't even flinch hearing that. Derek's descent no longer interested me. He was stuck in a spiral of bad choices and bruised ego, and I was too far above that to care. My energy was focused on new beginnings, on growth. I had recently purchased the commercial space next to our flagship store to create a baking school for young women. Sugar and Bloom wasn't just a bakery anymore. It was becoming a legacy. Then came the moment I never expected. One afternoon, while hosting a charity event for local small business owners, Melissa, yes, that Melissa, walked through the door. She looked very different from the confident 25-year-old who once stole my husband. Her eyes were softer, her smile a little sadder, and her expensive designer handbag was notably absent. She approached cautiously as I finished my speech. "Sophie," she said, nervously wringing her hands, "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." The room buzzed around us, but in that moment, I gave her my full attention. "I believed everything he said back then," she admitted, voice breaking. "He told me you were cold and controlling, that you didn't support him. But when it happened to me, when he drained my account and blamed me for everything, I realized he was the problem all along." I watched her closely. There was no anger in me anymore, just clarity. "It takes time to see people for who they really are," I replied simply. "We all learn at our own pace." Melissa nodded, tears forming. "You didn't deserve what happened. None of it. And watching you now, it's inspiring. You didn't just survive him. You became someone so much stronger." She left shortly after, leaving me with an odd mix of emotions. Not triumph, not pity, just a sense of quiet closure. Derek's greatest defenders had become witnesses to his downfall. Even the woman he once used to hurt me now stood on my side of the truth. Weeks later, Sugar and Bloom celebrated its 5-year anniversary. The original store was decorated in pastel balloons and golden banners. Customers, friends, family, and even media filled the room. As I stood on stage, looking out at the faces who supported my journey, I realized something powerful. Derek wasn't even a memory anymore. He was a lesson. The man who thought I was nothing more than a housewife with a silly hobby had inadvertently become the fuel that pushed me to greatness. His betrayal forced me to protect myself. His cruelty taught me self-worth. His absence created space for ambition. During my speech, I glanced at the back wall of the store. There, framed in elegant gold, hung 2 familiar pieces of paper. His first text, "I'm done pretending," You and your silly baking hobby are pathetic. And next to it, my response letter, forever immortalized. You are not part of this story anymore. The crowd erupted into cheers as I ended my speech with words that had become my mantra. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better. And trust me, success tastes far sweeter than bitterness ever could. As I mingled with guests and laughed with friends, I caught my reflection in the boutique's glass window. Gone was the woman Derek once underestimated. In her place stood a business owner, a mentor, a leader, someone who built her own empire, brick by brick, while he faded quietly into irrelevance. I never heard from Derek again. Not through texts, not through lawyers, not even through gossip. He had vanished, forgotten, exactly where he belonged. Meanwhile, my story continued, filled with new dreams, bigger goals, and the kind of happiness he never thought I could achieve. No, I didn't need revenge. I had something far better. I had won,